Here we have an image we've done a little manipulation on before. It was the subject of the detail section and the noise options, the noise reduction. What I'd like to do here though is to use it to demonstrate the radial filter. Now we're going to need a fair bit of space, so once again I'm going to tuck that histogram away, because when this opens up you can see there's quite an array of changes we can make. You'll also notice that they're very similar to the brushes we looked at a few moments ago. And I need to talk about this option because we see this option in the adjustment brush, in the radial filter, and also in the graduated filter. But probably it's more useful in the graduated filter, so maybe we'll leave it and look at it there, but it does have an effect on all three of these tools. We can just add colour to the area we're editing. One of the problems we often have with images is we do get sometimes a weakness around the edge. We don't always spot it sometimes, but it's something that's been put right over many years, because I can remember this being a very valid technique even when I was working in a darkroom. It's very quick and easy to do and a very valuable tool in Lightroom. The way it works is that we can move on to the picture surface, and we need to click and drag. And when I do, depending on where I drag, you can see I can make any type of shape. It doesn't matter wherever we stop, because once again we get a pin which indicates that with the radial filter not only can we create one of those, we could create a number of them and edit them all individually if we wanted to. In addition, we can just hit the delete key and the radial filter is removed. But if we've got a number of them, we need to make sure we click the pin first to remove it. Let's select another one. Let's click and drag. What we can also do, apart from picking up any of those toggles and stretching this out to any shape we want, we can pick up the pin and move the whole thing around. And in addition, if we move the cursor close to the edge, we get a double-headed arrow which we again may recognize, and that enables us to turn the shape if we needed it for a specific reason. Now, deleting the filter again, let's do something for real this time. I'm going to click and drag into the picture surface. I want a nice oval shape, somewhere like that, but as I've demonstrated, we don't have to get it perfect straight away. Now, this tool has got two other aspects to it. There's firstly all of the changes we can make in this area here, the effect box, but also we get to adjust how soft the edge is, and it's set here by default at 50. We'll leave it at that for a moment. But we also get the opportunity to affect what's outside of the radial filter or what's inside by choosing to invert the mask. At the moment, when we first create it, we're only going to affect the outer areas, which is appropriate for the image I think I've chosen to demonstrate with. One other useful little keystroke when we're using any tools that give us this shape on the screen, the shape can get in the way to prevent us from seeing really clearly the changes we're about to make. So a shortcut of the H key will always hide those little bounding boxes, but it's still there and it's still doing its job. All I want to do here is to go to my exposure in this case, and I want to darken down the edges. So I'm just going to bring that down. Now you can see by doing that, you can see the effect instantly of what I'm doing. We can also see, possibly, that the shape needs to be moved perhaps a little bit to the left. So we can always hit the H key again to bring it back up on screen. So I can pick up the pin. I could move it that way a little bit. If I did need to rotate it a little bit to get the best effect because I'm looking at the tail of the bird, I can do that, and I can move it a bit more to the left. I may even decide that I want to actually do something like that. Fine tuning is what we're doing here. Let's hit the H key to hide that, and we'll double click the exposure again. Let's drag it down. If I take it down quite considerably, now because you're watching what I'm doing, you can see just how much impact we're having on that image. But I wouldn't mind betting that if we just open this image up, just as it is, you wouldn't bat an eyelid with that image. You wouldn't instantly say the edges are too dark. It just looks right. Now of course here, although we've affected just the outer edge and we've affected it with just exposure, we have other options too, because sometimes when we darken areas down, we may increase the saturation a bit, so we could drop the saturation down, and there's going to be other situations where maybe the other sliders will all come into play. If I hit the H key and we bring our tool back into play, what we can do here is to turn the feather off, and you can see the effect of that, especially if I hit the H key again. There you can see the feather completely off. And if we put the feather up to its maximum, then we get a much more gradual effect. I'll show you how that looks by turning the tool on and off. Doing it in that way, we are now encroaching on the bird too much. So we need to find the point where we're doing what we need to do on the background, but we're not encroaching on the bird. And there I think it's just about right. Now in addition, we can choose to invert the mask, and you can see instantly what happens. It leaves the outside edge as it was originally and applies all of these changes to the inside. Not appropriate with this image, but I'm sure you can find some examples where it would be appropriate to switch around to lighten an area just in the center, maybe somebody's face. Remember that you can make as many radial filters as you feel you need. All you need to remember is to go to the top and choose New. Now when you click and drag, you'll notice the pin over here is turned off straight away. So when I click and drag, I can produce as many of these as I want. Click New again, and there you can see we can have shapes all over the picture, and when we want to remove them, just click the pin and hit the delete key. Here we have an image where the radial filter may be able to help us pretty quickly and easily. I'm going to go into the Basic tab and give this guy quite a bit of power. I'm going to look at a healthy slug of clarity. Let's have a little look at a bit of vibrance. Maybe I can look at dropping the exposure down, giving it a real hard look. But I want to raise the face just a little bit to make that even more dominating than it already is. Well, let's shut down the Basic first, give ourselves a bit of space. Let's reach for the radial filter. Let me click and drag over his face. Nothing's shown up here. Now, if that happens to you, touch your H key, because there's a good chance that in a previous manipulation you were using the radial filter and you turned it off. And that's all that happened here. So I can turn this, drag it into position. I'll keep the feather quite high here, and I'll hide the outer edge by hitting that H again. And what I'm going to do here is go down first to invert the mask, because what I want to do here is not affect all around the outer edge. I just want to lift the tones in the guy's face. Now let's go to the exposure and just tweak it up a little bit. If we feel that the shape needs to be slightly bigger, then of course we can hit the H key and we can fiddle that and jiggle with it as much as we wish. Hit the H key again, double click the exposure, and you can see it's really putting a nice little bright light in the guy's face, drawing attention to him and giving the portrait just that little more impact and wow value.